Hello, welcome to the Historian channel. Leave your like written on the channel and activate the notification bell to stay on top of the biggest mysteries in the world. So let's go. There is no doubt that the ancient words used for elevated studies and religious scriptures for thousands of years were heard in the Sumerian language, just as the ancient gods were. The gods of Sumer were indeed the gods of Sumer, as the records, tales, and genealogies related to this culture were not found by chance. Although there are hundreds of gods, when named and counted in their original Sumerian forms or later Akkadian, Babylonian, or Assyrian forms, it became evident that they did not form a mere amalgamation of deities. They were presented as a pantheon of great gods governed by an assembly of deities related to one another. Many inferior deities, such as nephews, nieces, grandchildren, and similar figures, were restorations of a much more restricted and consistent group of deities, each with specific roles, powers, and responsibilities. The Sumerians believed that there were gods who came from the heavens. Texts dealing with the time before things were created mention these celestial gods by the names of Abzu and Tiamat. There are no reports of gods from this category having appeared on Earth. As we approach these gods that existed before the Earth was created, we understand that they were the celestial bodies specifying our solar system. As we will demonstrate, the so-called Sumerian myths about these gods are, in fact, precise and scientific cosmological concepts explaining the creation of our solar system. There were also inferior gods considered terrestrial, worshipped primarily in provincial cities. These gods had limited functions, such as Adius Anakashi, responsible for inspecting the production of beverages. They did not possess intimidating weapons and did not instill fear in other gods. They resembled the group of young gods depicted at the end of the procession, engraved on the rocks and Titus of Asilicaia. Among the two groups of gods, there were the gods of the sky and the earth, known as the ancient gods. They were the old gods of epic tales and, according to belief, played a fundamental role in Sumerian cosmology. The Sumerian gods were not mere local features, but national and even international deities who descended from the heavens to earth. Some of them were present and active on Earth even before the existence of the first man. In fact, the very creation of man was considered a creative endeavor of these powerful gods, capable of feats beyond the understanding and ability of mortals. Despite this, these gods had human-like aspects, such as eating and drinking, and emotions like love, hatred, loyalty, and infidelity. Despite changes in the roles and positions of major deities over the millennia, some of them maintain their prominent and revered status both nationally and internationally. Upon closer examination of this central group, a divine dynasty emerges, a family of closely related yet bitterly divided gods. The head of this family of gods from the heavens and earth was Anu. In ancient texts, he was known as the Great Father of the Gods, the King of the Gods. His domain extended over the heavens, and his symbol was a star. In Sumerian pictographic writing, the star symbol also represented the sky and a divine being or descending god. This symbol's meaning persisted through the years as writing evolved from Sumerian pictographs to Akkadian cuneiform and to stylized Babylonian and Assyrian forms. From the earliest times until the disappearance of cuneiform writing in the 4th millennium BC and nearly up to the time of Christ, this symbol preceded the names of gods, indicating that the name written in the text was not that of a mortal but of a celestial presence. His realm was located in the heavens. Other gods of the sky and earth would approach him when seeking private counsel or favors, or when gathering in assembly to resolve disputes or make important decisions. Numerous texts describe Anu's palace, with its portals guarded by a god of the tree of truth and a god of the tree of life. His throne, like those of other gods, was approached with respect and ceremony. Sumerian texts often suggest that mortals, especially those chosen, could discover Anu's residence. His perfection and loyalty were so great that they allowed the data to be received by Anu. Ascension is informed by data on what to expect when facing King Anu. You will walk the path of the heavens, and upon reaching the heavens and approaching the gate of Anu, you will encounter the owner of life and the planter of truth. They will be before the gate of Anu, where the soul was guided by its creator and reached the celestial residences of Anu. However, when offered the chance to become immortal, The soul suspected that Anu was offering poisoned food and was therefore sent back to Earth as a sacred priest, yet still mortal. The Sumerian belief that chosen mortals could ascend to the heavens echoes in the biblical stories of the ascension of Enoch and the prophet Elijah. Although Anu did not reside in the heavens, Sumerian texts describe situations where he descended to Earth during times of great crisis, on ceremonial visits accompanied by his wife Utu, or even to consecrate his great-granddaughter Nanna. His consort resided permanently on Earth, which apparently did not require a specific city or cult center. His residence, or high house, was located in Uruk, the biblical city that was the domain of the goddess Enlil. Today, the ruins of Uruk include a massive man-made mound where archaeologists found evidence of the construction and descriptions of a grand temple, the Temple of Anu, with 18 distinct phases. The existence of the temple as a sacred site was mandatory. The Temple of Anu, known as Inanna, was a structure worthy of admiration. According to Sumerian texts, it was called sacred and pure sanctuary. The great gods themselves contributed to its construction, making its cornice like copper and its great walls reach the clouds. It was a supreme domicile, a house of irresistible charm and infinite fascination, with the clear purpose of being the home for those descending from the heavens. An inscription found among a group of texts clarifies the splendor and grandeur that accompanied Anu and his wife's official visits. Although the inscription was damaged, it reveals that the gods followed a strict protocol, forming a procession in front of and behind the possessor of the scepter. After descending, the exalted court and the purification priest made libations to the scepter before the possessor took their seat. The deities Papaskal and Quishala also sat in the court of King Anu. Meanwhile, the goddesses known as the divine daughters of Anu carried unidentified objects to the house of the golden bed and the goddess. They then returned in procession to the courtroom where Utu was seated while the afternoon meal was prepared, following a specific ritual. A special priest remained at the door of the sanctuary, where they would spend the night, with a mixture of oil and wine to prevent the doors from creaking during the god's sleep. An astronomer priest ascended to the highest level of the main tower of the temple to observe the heavens and identify the appearance of a specific planet called the Great Anu of the sky. Upon sighting it, he announced its appearance as the celestial planet of Lord Anu, and the image of the creator was illuminated. Next, the 7 great gods washed their hands in large golden basins, and the second part of the feast began with the ritual of mouth-washing. The priests wore special garments, and gods, priests, singers, and food-bearers organized themselves in procession, accompanying the 2 visitors to the sanctuary for the night. 4 deities of great importance were assigned to remain in the courtroom, standing guard, while other deities were placed in specific security roles. The entire region was lively and celebrating the presence of the divine visitors. When a signal was given by the main temple, priests from all other temples were to light torches for bonfires. Priests in other cities, upon seeing the bonfires in Uruk, were to follow suit. The people of the land lit bonfires at their homes and offered banquets to all the gods. City guards lit bonfires in the streets and squares. The timing for the 2 great gods was predicted with precision, not only to the day but to the minute. On the 17th day, 40 minutes after sunrise, the gate would open before the gods. The final part of this fragment is cut off, but another text likely describes the departure, the breakfast, the enchantments, and the handshakes, with the great gods being taken to the starting point on thrones-like platforms carried by temple staff. An Assyrian description of a deity procession, although from a later period, probably gives us a good idea of how Anu and Utu were carried during the procession in Uruk. Special enchantments were recited as the procession passed through the street of the gods, and other psalms and hymns were sung as the procession approached the sacred canal of Anu's boat. Then, farewells were made, and more enchantments were recited and sung with raised hands. Finally, all the priests and temple staff who carried the gods handed them over to a senior priest, who offered a special departure prayer, "Great Anu, may the sky and earth bless you." They chanted this 7 times. They would pray for the blessing of the 7 celestial gods, invoking both the gods in the sky and those walking on the earth. Finally, they would proclaim the farewell to Anu, giving thanks to the gods of the depths and the gods of the divine residence for the blessings they bestowed daily, every day, month, and year. Among the many ancient gods on Earth, Anu does not appear to be explicitly described, but his image is present in every statue and portrait of each known king from antiquity to the present day. Anu was known as the great god and king of the gods, and he was also the one who granted grace for others to be crowned kings. According to Sumerian tradition, leadership derived from Anu, and the exact term for kingship was associated with insignias and the staff, which symbolized the shepherd's guidance. Nowadays, the shepherd's staff is more commonly found in the hands of bishops rather than kings, although the crown and scepter are still used. Regardless of the kings and thrones predicted throughout human history, the second most powerful deity in the pantheon was known as the Lord of Space. He was the prototype and father of the later storm gods who led the pantheons of the ancient world. He was the eldest son of Anu, born in the celestial residence of his father, but at some point in ancient times, he descended to Earth, becoming the principal god of both heaven and earth. When the gods convened in assembly in the celestial residence alongside his father, on Earth, they gathered in the court of Enlil, in the divine precinct of Nippur, a city dedicated to him. He was considered supreme not only by the Sumerians, but also by the gods of Sumer. He was called the ruler of all lands, and it was clear that in the heavens he was the prince, and on earth, he was the chief. His word had the power to make the heavens tremble and the earth quake. His power reached far, and his word was supreme and sacred, with an immutable sentence that decreed future destinies. The gods of the earth bowed before him voluntarily, and the celestial gods on earth awaited his commands faithfully. According to Sumerian tradition, he arrived on earth long before. From his civilization, a hymn was established in honor of Enlil, the all-beneficent, enumerating various aspects of society that would not exist without his instructions. Without Enlil's orders, no city would have been built, no colony founded, no stables or enclosures erected, and no king crowned or high priest born. According to Sumerian beliefs, Enlil arrived on Earth long before his civilization was established. During the pre-unity times, he founded Nippur as his command center, where heaven and earth were connected by a link. This place was called Dur, the heaven and the earth. In Sumerian texts, which used poetic language to describe early actions, Enlil was also described as being at the center of the four corners of the world in the beginning when only the gods existed and humanity had not yet been created. Enlil met the goddess who would become his wife. In one version of the story, he saw his future bride while she bathed naked in the river of Nippur. It was love at first sight, but not necessarily with marital interests. The goddess, who was a virgin, said to Enlil, "My body does not know copulation. My lips are too small, and I do not know the kiss." She refused his advances, and Enlil confessed to his chamberlain in the south his ardent desire for the young maiden who lived with her mother. Enlil suggested a boat trip on the river and brought a new boat, convincing her to sail with him. Once on the boat, ancient legend tells that, although Enlil was the leader of the gods, the other gods became so furious that they seized him and expelled him to the underworld. Enlil and the goddess cried out for help and were rejected by the city. Another version says that the goddess married Enlil after he sent his chamberlain to her mother to ask for her daughter's hand. In any case, the goddess became Enlil's wife and was given the title of Nino, Lady of the Space. However, the gods knew that it was not Enlil who seduced the goddess, but rather the opposite. The truth is that she was bathing naked in the river according to her own mother's instructions, hoping that Enlil, who usually passed by the river, would notice her and desire to embrace and kiss her immediately. Despite his passion, she was deemed worthy of esteem from the moment Enlil granted her the robes of sovereignty. With the exception of a complex issue related to succession, Enlil never had another known infidelity. A stele found in Nippur shows Enlil being served in his time. The stele was authorized by Ur-Nammu, Enlil's servant. In addition to being the chief of the gods, Enlil was also considered the supreme lord of Sumer, often simply called the earth and its people, the black-headed. A Sumerian hymn reveres Enlil as follows: "Lord who knows the fate of the earth, trustworthy in your call. He who knows the fate of Sumer, trustworthy in your call. Father Enlil, Lord of all lands, from the black-headed mountain of dawn to the mountain of twilight, there is no other Lord on earth. You alone are King." The Sumerians believed that Enlil was responsible for ensuring that the decrees of the assembly of the gods were fulfilled, often sending destructive storms to punish cities. During the flood, it was Enlil who sought the destruction of humanity. However, when at peace with humanity, he was a benevolent god who granted favors. According to Sumerian texts, he gave humanity the knowledge of agriculture, as well as the pickaxe and the plow. Enlil also selected kings who would govern humanity not as independent sovereigns, but as servants of God tasked with administering divine laws of justice. Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian kings recorded their acts in cuneiform writing to ensure their legitimacy and outline their functions. Enlil was known as the god of heaven and earth, bestower of power, father of the gods and men, giver of agriculture, and lord of space. These attributes revealed his greatness and the powers he possessed. Despite his divine status, Enlil was as human as any young man, subject to the moral laws imposed by the community of gods. His transgressions could lead to expulsion and even human complaints. On one known occasion, a Sumerian king, Uarnamu, complained directly to the assembly of the gods that a series of problems affecting his people might have been caused by Enlil. Although respected, Enlil was also a being with flaws and limitations. As we delve deeper, we uncover more about these complexities. Ea's crucial role in divine and mortal affairs on Earth, as well as the struggles of his various children for divine succession, gave rise to later legends about battles among the gods. The third great deity of Sumer was another son of Anu who had two names. Like his brother Enlil, he was a god of the sky and the earth. Originally a celestial deity, Ea descended to Earth. In Sumerian texts, Ea's arrival on Earth is associated with the period when the waters of the Persian Gulf penetrated deeply inland, turning the southern region into swamps. Ea, a skilled engineer, planned and supervised the construction of canals, dikes, and the draining of the swamps. He loved to navigate these water channels and swamps, as water was his element. He built his great house in the city he founded at one end of the swamps, a city called Panta Aqui, also known as Edu, House of Ir. He was the lord of the salty waters, ruling over the seas and oceans. Sumerian texts recount a distant time when the three great gods divided their domains among themselves. The seas were given to Ea, the lord of the seas. He built boats that sailed to distant lands, bringing back precious metals and stones. Older Sumerian cylinder seals depict Ea as a deity surrounded by flowing rivers and sometimes represented as a fish. These seals associate Ea with the moon, possibly based on the fact that the moon causes the tides. The epithet Nino Ponto Ig, or Lord of the Broken Eyes of Ea, undoubtedly refers to this astral image. According to Sumerian texts, including a remarkable autobiography of Ea, he was born in the heavens and descended to Earth before any colony or civilization existed on the planet. When he approached the territory, there were many floods. He then stated that he took a series of measures to make the Earth habitable. He filled the Tigris River with fresh, life-giving water and appointed a deity to oversee the construction of canals, making the Tigris and Euphrates navigable. He cleared the swamps, filling them with fish and creating shelters for birds of all kinds, and also encouraged the growth of vegetation useful for construction. By transitioning from the seas and rivers to dry land, Ea established himself as the god who had plowed and opened sacred furrows. Stables were built, pens were erected, and ancient texts attribute to Ea the order of the world, as studied by scholars. This god is credited with bringing to the lands the arts of brickmaking, the construction of homes and cities, metallurgy, and much more, being considered the greatest benefactor of humanity. He is described as the god who brought civilization. Many texts also present him as the primary protagonist of humanity in the councils of the gods. Levian, Akkadian, and Sumerian texts, which the biblical accounts might have been based on, describe Ea as the god who, by challenging the decision of the assembly of the gods, allowed a trusted follower to escape disaster. In fact, Akkadian and Sumerian texts argue that a god or gods created man through a conscious and deliberate act. The Old Testament attributes to Ea a key role as the chief scientist of the gods, outlining the method and process by which man would be created. Given Ea's involvement with the creation of man, It is not surprising that he advocated for man's creation as a model created by celestial wisdom, defying the gods' decision to deny eternal life to humanity. He sided with man simply because he participated in his creation, though Ea might have had other subjective reasons. However, upon examining the record, we see that, most of the time, Ea's challenges, whether in mortal or divine matters, aim to thwart the decisions or plans of Anu. The record is filled with restrictions concerning the division of the world among the gods, suggesting that Ea may have lost dominion over the earth to his brother Enlil through a lottery. The gods, by casting lots, divided the domains. The sky was given to Enlil and the earth was assigned to Ea. Ea expressed his dissatisfaction with the results of the lottery in his autobiography, stating that as the firstborn son, he was the true heir of Anu. He declared, "My father, the king of the universe, brought light to the universe. I am the seed fertilized by the great wild Tur. I am the firstborn son of Anu. I am the great brother of the gods, born as the first son of the divine Anu." The social and familial laws applicable to men in the ancient Orient also influenced this view. In the ancient world, copies of divine laws and family records were found in places such as Mari, confirming the succession issues faced by Hebrew patriarchs. For example, Abraham had a firstborn son with his wife's servant, since his wife was apparently barren. However, his son Ishmael was excluded from the patriarchal succession when Sarah bore Abraham's own son, Isaac. Isaac's wife, Rebekah, gave birth to twins, Esau, the red, hairy, and strong firstborn, and Jacob, who was born grasping Esau's heel. Rebekah preferred Jacob, who was more refined, and when Isaac was about to declare his will, she deceived him so that the succession went to Jacob rather than Esau. Jacob faced succession issues himself because Laban forced him to marry Leah first before he could marry Rachel, whom Jacob preferred. Jacob favored Joseph, Rachel's firstborn, over his other sons. Understanding these customs and succession laws helps clarify conflicting claims, such as the declaration, "I am the fertile seed. I am the firstborn son of Anu." This claim may reflect a historical situation where the individual was born of another goddess who was merely a concubine of Anu. This has parallels in earlier celestial residences, such as the stories of the twins Esau and Jacob, or Isaac and Ishmael. Although Ea appeared to accept the succession rights of Enlil, some scholars find enough evidence to suggest a continuous power struggle between the two gods. Samuel Kramer, in one of the ancient texts, describes Ea's complex of inferiority. As we will see later, several biblical stories have Sumerian originals involving moments of inferiority, such as the tale of Eve and the serpent in the Garden of Eden or the flood story. At one point, Ea realized it made little sense to fight for the divine throne and focused his efforts on making one of his sons, preferably a son of Enki, his heir. He attempted to achieve this goal, at least initially, with the help of his sister, Ninhursag, the Lady of the Mountain's Peak, who was also a daughter of Anu but not of Untu. This underscores another succession rule. Past studies have shown that a man could marry a half-sister, and it became clear that with numerous children from various women, the situation was complex. A wife, being 50% purer than a child born of an unrelated woman, could be the legal heir, whether or not she was the firstborn. This led to the practice in Mari and other places of adopting a sister as the preferred wife to ensure that her child would be a legal heir. The desire to have a child with one of these half-sisters, like Ninhursag, who was also celestial and had descended to earth in ancient times, was common. Some texts state that when the gods divided the domains of the earth, it was granted to Dilma, a pure and shining land. A published text describes the paradise myth and the marital journey of Ninhursag. The text repeatedly emphasizes that Ninhursag was alone, uncommitted, and single, though she was later described as an elderly matron. She must have been very attractive when young, as the text tells us that when Enki moved away from her, his desire caused the water dikes to overflow, and he ordered that she remain alone in her femininity. Ninhursag gave birth on the riverbanks, but the child was a girl. Unable to have a male heir, she decided to have relations with her own daughter. She embraced and kissed her, depositing the semen in her womb. However, the child born was also a girl. Determined to have a male heir, Ninhursag tried again, but the result was another girl. With her continued efforts, Ninhursag eventually became mortally ill. Although these events had a significant impact on divine affairs, other stories related to human matters reveal that, according to Sumerian texts, Ninhursag created man following formulas left by Enki. She was the chief nurse responsible for medical equipment and was called Ninti, the Lady of Life. Some scholars see a parallel between Ninti and the biblical Adam, where the Sumerian dual meaning may refer to both life and rib. Thus, the name Ninti not only meant Lady of Life but also Lady of the Rib. Eve, whose name means life, was created from Adam's rib and was also a Lady of Life and Lady of the Rib. Ninhursag was a giver of life to both gods and humans, and her diminutive was Mamu, the predecessor word. In our current tradition, Mamu's symbol was the cutter, a tool used by midwives in antiquity to cut the umbilical cord. After birth, Mamu was fortunate enough to produce a rightful heir with his sister. The youngest of the gods, born in the heavens, was named Ninti, the lord who completed the foundation. He was the heroic son of Enki, who advanced with chains and rays of light, fighting for his father as the Avenger, distinguished by his arrows of light. His wife, Baal, was also a nurse or healer, and her epithet was Lady who brings the dead to life. Ancient depictions show Ninti wielding a unique weapon, and although he shot arrows of light, ancient texts acclaim him as a powerful hunter and a war god known for his martial skills. However, his most prominent heroic deed was not performed in his father's name, but for his own cause. He fought a great battle against a malevolent god named Zu. This battle involved nothing less than the leadership of the gods and their sacred objects. The texts describing these events are incomplete at the beginning, and the story only becomes readable when referring to Enki's temple. It seems that the character is known and respected, as Enki entrusted him with guarding the entrance to his sanctuary. However, the evil one, with treacherous intent, planned to depose Enki and seize his powers to carry out his plans. To do this, he needed to obtain certain objects, including the magical Rod of Destinies. He found the perfect opportunity when Enki was distracted while bathing and neglected his adornments. The traitor then stole the Rod of Destinies and deposed Enki, fleeing to a distant hideout in his flying machine. The consequences of this act began to manifest, with divine formulas being suspended and a stillness spreading throughout. The splendor of the sanctuary vanished, and silence reigned in lieu. The father was at a loss for words, and the earth gods gathered to discuss the gravity of the situation. The matter was so serious that even Anu, in his celestial residence, was informed. After assessing the situation, Anu discovered that the traitor should be captured so that the possible formulas could be restored. He summoned his children and asked, "Who among the gods will be the most glorious of all?" This question, known for its courage, remained open. They were summoned, but all pointed to Quizzer. Having acquired the Tablet of Destinies, he now possessed the same powers as Enlil, and those who opposed him would become his clay. It was then that Ea had a great idea. Why not call Minyuta to take on this impossible battle? The gods in the assembly couldn't help but understand Ea's cunning plan. Certainly, the chances of success increased. "I gave birth with cries of pain," she specified, and it was she who ensured the continuity of the kingdom of heaven for her brother and for Anu, so that her sufferings would not be in vain. She instructed Minyuta to fight and win. Advance to the attack, capture the fugitive Zu, let the terrifying force turn against him. Cut his throat, let all the plagues afflict him. Let all the hurricanes attack him. Let the radiation strike him. Let the winds carry his wings to a secret place. Let sovereignty return to Enlil, and let the divine formulas return to the Father who begot you. The various versions of the epic present thrilling accounts of the battle between Minyuta and Zu. The Tablet of Destinies of the gods caused the weapons to stop midway. When the battle began to grow weary, Ea advised Minyuta to aim his weapons and fire them. The feathers, or small cogwheels of Zu's wings, fell and scattered, and Zu was defeated. The Tablet of Destinies returned to Enlil. But who was Zu? Was he, as some scholars claim, a mythological bird? It is evident that he could fly, but anyone today can do so in an airplane or a spacecraft. Minyuta could also fly as skillfully, perhaps even better. However, he was not a bird of any kind. As abundantly described in his many instructions, made by him or by his consort Baal, also called Geopontula, he flew with the help of a remarkable bird that he kept in his sacred enclosure. Zu was not a bird either. Apparently, he had a bird at his disposal in which he could fly to escape to his hiding place. The celestial battle between the two gods took place within these birds. There is no doubt about the nature of the weapon that finally defeated Zu's bird, called Tio in Sumerian and Tiolu in Assyrian. Its meaning in Hebrew is "this was a god," one of the gods who. There were reasons to plan the usurpation of Enlil's powers. Zu was a god with whom Ninurta, the legitimate successor, had every reason to fight. Perhaps he patiently waited to take something that was not legally handed over to him. There are indications that, since Enki could not have a son with his sister to produce a legitimate contender for Enlil's kingdom, he entrusted this task to his son Marduk. Indeed, when great social and military upheaval swept across the ancient Middle East at the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, Marduk was elevated in Babylon to the status of the national god of Sumer and Akkad. Marduk was proclaimed king of the gods, supplanting Enlil, and the other gods were forced to swear allegiance to him and reside in Babylon, where their activities could be easily supervised. The most important ancient texts were rewritten and altered to make Marduk the Lord of the Heavens, the creator, the benefactor, and the hero, instead of Anu or Ninurta. Among the altered texts was the tale of Zu. According to the Babylonian version, Marduk fought against Zu, using victorious weapons against his own son. Judging by his behavior, as well as his urgency in asserting his power, regardless of who the winner was, the only logical conclusion is that Zu was also, in some way, a legitimate candidate for Enlil's kingdom. This implies that only one god, Nanna, the firstborn of his official consort, held authority over the most famous city-state of Sumer, Ur. His temple, called Kishnugal, House of the Throne Seed, was where Nanna and his wife, Ningal, the Great Lady, ruled with great benevolence over the people of Ur. In return for the divine rulers, animals were sacrificed, and the soft music of drums could be heard. Under the governance of the protective god Nanna, Ur became the granary of Sumer, supplying grain and sheep to the entire region. However, the lament for the destruction of Ur describes negatively how the city was affected in its decline. In Nanna's granaries, there were no cereals. The gods' afternoon meals were suppressed. In the great dining halls, wine and honey were no longer served. In the temple's supreme oven, jabs and rams were not prepared. The buzzing ceased in the great offering place. That house, where oxen's orders were shouted, was now oppressively silent. The offering boats no longer brought sacrifices. The offering bread was no longer delivered. The barge was empty, and no foot stepped on its shores. Long grasses grew there. This account illustrates how the city of Ur experienced great prosperity under Nanna's protection, and how its fall affected not only the city, but also the well-being of the gods. One of the most remarkable things about the fall of the Sumerian city of Ur is that the fall of Ur was lamented not only by the people, but also by the gods themselves. The protective deity of the city, Nanna, and his wife, Ningal, composed laments about the decline of Ur. These laments reveal the trauma of the unusual events that led to the city's downfall. Sumerian texts report that Nanna and Ningal left before the decline was complete. It was a hasty and emotional departure for them, as they loved the city. The fall of Ur and the exile of its gods were described in the laments as the result of a deliberate decision by Anu. Nanna appealed directly to Anu, pleading for the punishment to be lifted and the city's prosperity restored. He exposed his suffering heart to his father, Enlil, and begged for a favorable response. The fall of Ur was not just a tragedy for the people, but also for their gods, who lost a city they loved and protected. The laments about the fall of Ur do not reveal the exact reasons for Anu's wrath, but they suggest that if Zu was protected, it might have been justified by the crime of usurpation. Some evidence points in this direction, such as the reference to the boats of heaven in the Sumerian Psalms, which describe Nanna as glorious in this mode of transport. Furthermore, the name Zu was derived from Suin, another form of pronouncing Zu, and both names were mirrors of each other. These clues lead to the conclusion that Nanna might indeed be Zu, the Lord Zu who attempted to take Enlil's throne. But why, even with EA's suggestion, Was Lord Zu not executed but exiled instead? Sumerian texts and archaeological evidence show that Zu and his wife fled to Haran, a city protected by rivers and mountains, which might explain Enlil's choice of exile as revenge. It is interesting to note that Abraham's clan also went to Haran when they left Ur with his father, Terah, and stayed there for many years before reaching the Promised Land. Despite their stay in Haran, a city dedicated to Nanna, it seems that Haran was their residence for a long period, with buildings and streets that closely resembled those of Ur. The book Abraham and His Time summarized the similarities by stating that all the evidence indicates that the worship in Haran was merely an exact replica of that in Ur. During more than 50 years of excavations, the remains of the Temple of Sin, built and rebuilt over the millennia, were found. Among the findings were 2 steles with a unique record dictated by a high priestess of Sin, recounting how she prayed and planned for the return of Sin, who at some point in the past had become enraged with his city. The idea that he had left the city and ascended to heaven is corroborated by other inscriptions, which recount how the Assyrian king Artur obtained a sacred cylinder seal made from the most precious jasper from his enemies. He enhanced the seal by engraving an image of Sin on it, and later wrote a tribute on the sacred stone, hanging it around the neck of Sin's statue. This stone seal of Sin must have been an ancient relic, as it was damaged during the destruction wrought by the enemy in those days. It is believed that the high priestess, born during the reign of Ashurbanipal, proposed a practical agreement in her petitions to Sin. She suggested restoring Sin's powers over his opponents in exchange for helping her son, Nabonidus, become the ruler of Sumer and Akkad. Historical records confirm that in 555 BC, Nabonidus was appointed to the throne with Sin's direct assistance. He fulfilled his mother's promise to the god by rebuilding Sin's temple and declaring him as the supreme god. Sin then replaced the title of Crescent Divine and solidified his tradition as the moon god. But how did Sin, who had ascended to heaven in displeasure, manage to accomplish these feats back on earth? Nabonidus performed a miracle to confirm that Sin had indeed set aside his anger and decided to return to the temple. The miracle occurred when a deity descended from heaven, an event that had not happened on earth since ancient times and was forever preserved in inscriptions. Unfortunately, we have few details about how Sin landed on earth, but we know that Jacob saw a ladder leading to the heavens, with angels ascending and descending on it, when he was on his way to Canaan to find a bride in that ancient region. While Nabonidus restored Nanna's powers and temples, Sin also restored the temples and enthusiasm of Sin and Nanna's twin children, Inanna and Nanna. The brilliant Inanna was technically the firstborn, but Nanna was the firstborn son and therefore the legitimate dynastic heir. Unlike the rivalry between Esau and Jacob, the 2 divine children grew very fond of each other. They shared experiences and adventures, helping each other. When Inanna had to choose a husband between 2 gods, she turned to her brother for advice. They were born in ancient times, when only the gods inhabited the earth, and the city dominated by Nanna, Sippar, was listed among the first cities. Here's the translation of the reformulated text into English: Conditions by the gods in Sumer. When Nabonidus reported in an inscription that, upon digging 18 cubits into the ground, he found the ancient foundation platform of Utu, the great god of Sippar, he claimed that Utu personally showed him the foundation platform of Naram Sin, son of Sargon, something that no king had seen in the past 3,200 years. During the flourishing of civilization in Sumer, when humans joined the gods on earth between the rivers, Utu was initially associated with law and justice. Some of the earliest codes of laws, in addition to invoking the king of Babylon, like Hammurabi, were written on stele where the king is depicted receiving the laws from the god. Bars unearthed in Sippar test its ancient reputation as a place of just and correct laws. Some texts describe Utu himself sitting in judgment over gods and men. Sippar was, indeed, the seat of the Sumerian Supreme Court. The justice advocated by Utu is similar to that of the Sermon on the Mount, recorded in the New Testament. A wisdom bar suggests the following behavior to please Utu: do not harm your adversary, compensate your wrongdoer, let justice be done to your enemy, do not let your heart be led to evil, give food to those who beg, give wine to drink, be helpful and do good. Utu was seen as the protector of travelers and the defender of justice, which made him an important god for the Mesopotamian people. However, his most striking characteristic was his brilliance, being called Babur, the Bright One, since ancient times. Although associated with the sun as his celestial equivalent, there are records stating that Utu called himself this while performing special tasks given by his grandfather Anu. Like Utu, the goddess Inanna, known by the Babylonians and Assyrians as Ishtar, was also widely revered by the Mesopotamian peoples. She was the goddess of warfare and love, a beautiful and impetuous woman who held a prominent place among the great gods of heaven and earth. Inanna had a home in the land of Arata, east of Sumer, but her mission led her to covet the city of Uruk, where the great temple of Anu was located. There are numerous records, including inscriptions, enchantments, and prayers, that attest to Inanna's physical presence and existence. Her presence is so ancient that a Mesopotamian king from the 13th century BC claimed to have rebuilt the goddess's temple in Sippar, the city of her brother, on foundations that were already 800 years old. The tales of prominence among the great gods and the Sumerian king lists confirm that the non-divine ruler, Jiru, who was the son of the god Utu and a human mother, was succeeded by his son Imreker, a great Sumerian king. Nanna, the great-aunt of Imreker, did not find it difficult to use all possible arguments in a war of nerves to force the city into submission, as the lord of the market, who was a servant of Nanna, made her the queen of the house of Anu. The epic suggests a somewhat clear and happy ending. As Nanna moved to Uruk, she did not abandon her home in Arata. It is not entirely clear whether she became a traveling goddess, though she was known from other texts as an adventurous traveler. The occupation of Anu's time in Uruk could not have occurred without Nanna's knowledge and consent. The text provides specific ideas about how such consent was obtained. Nanna was soon known as Nonium, a diminutive meaning beloved of Anu. It happened that Nanna shared not only the temple, but also the bed of Anu whenever he visited. Thanks to her ascent to the celestial residence, she paved her own path as a goddess of Uruk and mistress of the temple, using tricks to gain the position in Uruk and increase her own powers. However, to the south, in the ancient city of Edu, the center of Enki, Nanna sought to borrow or steal his secrets. Intending to use her personal charm on Enki, her great-uncle, Nanna visited him privately. This did not go unnoticed, as she requested her steward to prepare a dinner for two. The god of wisdom was delighted by his niece's visit, and during the dinner, under the influence of alcohol, he granted her around 100 formulas, including some that were foundational to high civilization. These formulas covered various aspects, including priestly functions, weapons, legal procedures, scribal professions, musical instruments, and even temple prostitution. By the time Nanna had obtained the knowledge and left, it was too late for Enki to act. She was already far away on her skyboat. Nanna was frequently depicted as a nude goddess, showcasing her beauty and even lifting her skirts to reveal the lower parts of her body. She used her beauty and personal charm to enhance her power and secure her position in Uruk. Enki's center was an ancient city located further south along the Euphrates, and Nanna, aware of Enki's great knowledge, took advantage of the opportunity. She decided to either ask for a loan or steal the secrets, pretending to use her charm for that purpose. With the help of her stewards, she managed to enter the palace and obtain the knowledge she sought. According to reports, a ruler of Uruk around 2900 BCE, who was partly divine, born of a goddess and a human father, recounted that Nanna, despite already having an official husband, seduced him after he had bathed following a battle and donned a golden fiber robe secured with a sash. She sought the ruler to become her lover, asking him to be her male partner, with her as his wife. However, the ruler was aware of Nanna's reputation and questioned which of her lovers she had loved forever and which of her shepherds had pleased her forever. He agreed to her offer, reciting a long list of his own amorous affairs. Over time, Nanna attained higher positions in the pantheon and, with them, the responsibility of managing state affairs. She acquired professional qualities and was frequently mentioned in inscriptions. Assyrian kings described how they went to war under her command and how she advised them to attack or wait. Sometimes she marched at the head of the troops, and on at least one occasion, She granted Maphania and appeared before all the troops in exchange for her leadership. Nanna promised the Assyrian kings a long life and success, assuring them that she would watch over them from a golden chamber in the heavens. Did Nanna become a bitter warrior due to the difficult times during Marduk's rise to power? In one of her inscriptions, inhabitants swore they had changed their cult during King Marduk's reign. They removed their offerings and disarmed their team, reporting that Nanna became angry, creating an inconvenient situation that he did not name, perhaps seeking to combine love and power. Nanna also sought the youngest son of Enki as her husband. Many ancient texts deal with the loves and disputes of the couple. Some include beautiful and sensual love songs, while others recount how she enchanted upon returning from her travels. It was then that she planned her capture and disappearance into the underworld, a realm ruled by her sister. Regarding Enki's consort, of the 6 known children, 3 were portrayed by the Sumerians. The firstborn, Marduk, ultimately usurped legal supremacy and became the ruler of the world. The underworld and Musi, who married Inanna, also had 3 children who played key roles in both divine and human affairs. Less frequently grouped together, the 4 were often mentioned in ceremonies, conversations, and visits to Anu Gold, forming a cohesive group. One text describes the entrance to Anu's court, stating that one reached the throne room through the gate of Sim Chamas Hadad. Another text, first published by the Russian Academy of Material Culture History, poetically describes the 4 retiring together for the night. The greatest affinity seemed to exist between Idade and Cha, and they were even depicted side by side, as shown in the relief of the Assyrian ruler. Could the relationship between Churros and his circle go beyond a platonic relationship, considering Cha's record? It is interesting to note that in the biblical Song of Songs, the maiden calls her lover Du, a word that means both lover and uncle at the same time. Was Chia called Hadad, a derivative of the Sumerian Dada, the uncle who was also a lover? However, Exu was not only a conqueror but also a powerful god endorsed by his father, Novo, with the powers and prerogatives of a storm god. As such, he was revered, much like Rita, the Amorite windblower, Hamanu, the thunderer, the Canaanite Haginu, the hail thrower, Wendel, the lightmaker, and the Semi also Ir, the one who illuminates the skies. A list of deities preserved in the British Museum, as shown by Hanselobish Victor and Mesopotamia, clarifies that Che was indeed the divine lord in distant lands. According to Sumerian texts, this was no accident. Lu apparently intentionally endorsed his neophyte as a resident deity in the mountainous lands to the north and east of Mesopotamia. However, those who read took his youngest and most beloved son far from Nippur. Several Sumerian epic texts address discussions and even bloody battles among younger gods. Many cylinder seals depict scenes where one god faces another. It seems that the ancient rivalry between the children led, at times, to brothers turning against each other, similar to the story of Cain and Abel. Some battles involved an identified age, which may explain why he deemed it prudent to send his youngest son to a distant domain, keeping him away from the dangerous succession battles. The position of his own children is clear. In dynamic language, through a unique artifice, the assignment of a specific numerical category to the gods reveals the relationship between the members of the great circle of gods of heaven and earth. When Sumerian civilization flourished, it was discovered that the supreme pantheon was composed of 12 deities. The first indication of the application of the cryptographic numerical system to the great gods came with the discovery that the names of gods like Sim and Chamas were often replaced in texts by the numbers 30, 20, and 15, respectively. The highest unit of the Sumerian system, 60, was associated with Lu, 40, and Hadad, 10. The number 10 and its multiples within the base, 60 system were associated with male deities, and it seems plausible that numbers ending in 5 were associated with female deities. Thus, the following cryptographic table emerged. Male, 6 male ages. Female, 6 female deities. It is not surprising that Menorda was associated with the number 50, just like her father Lu. Her position in dynamic language was cryptographically conventional, as indicated. To depart, you Mirda, will put on your shoes, but until then, you are not one of the 12, as category 50 is already occupied. When Marduk usurped the kingdom of Enlil, He insisted on being endorsed by the gods with 50 names to indicate that Category 50 was now his. There were many other gods in Sumer, sons, grandsons, nephews, and nieces of the great gods, as well as several hundred lower category gods called Mas, but only 12 gods were considered primary. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and share with your friends. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, don't waste time and subscribe now so you don't miss the next videos. See you next time.